So in our group discussion today, the first thing that we went over was sensationalism, and its exact definition in the OED is the use of exciting or shocking stories or language at the expense of the accuracy in order to provoke public interest or excitement. One critic who claimed that the last volume of the novel was a mockery, a delusion, and a snare, and that all the incidents are not merely improbable, but they're absolutely impossible. So the fact that it took 3 editions being published before this was actually exposed by one critic, it doesn't really highlight the weakness of Collins' writing. It actually highlights his ability, because since the readers they simply assume that the events in the novel were consistent and believable, it just shows how persuasive he was. Since the readers get so lost in the sensation of the novel that they basically race to the end to try to find out the ending, and they don't really question the validity of the events.
In addition to that, we talked specifically about how Walter's stimulation by his senses leads to unreliability in his narration, because he's always being caught off guard by different sensations that are all hitting him at once, and he kind of gets caught up in that, and then as a result can't really articulate the things that he needs to be articulating and thinking about at the actual time.
So the same sense of overstimulation and hindering narration extends itself onto later in the book. So we're going to talk about a passage on page 283. The influence of this terrible dream from which she had awakened me hung darkly and heavily over every fresh impression which the progress of her narrative produced on my mind. First thing we wanted to highlight in this was the diction of darkly and heavily. Marian's sensations driven from her dream about Walter seem to overshadow her ability to recall events. So this directly ties to the article talking about how sensations can overshadow narration.
Going back to Carly's passage, when Marian says, "I felt the ominous future coming close, chilling me with an unutterable awe, forcing on me the conviction of an unseen design, and I too began to doubt whether we were not advancing blindfolded to an appointed and inevitable end." So, in this sense, we believe that Marian might have a stronger bond with Walter because she picks up on metaphysical and intuitive sensations in her dream.
We want to go back to the actual dream Marian had about Walter. Pestilence that waits, the arrow that strikes, the sea that drowns, the grave that closes over love and hope are steps in my journey that take me nearer and nearer to the end. So we talked about how all these different threats to his different sensations lead him to his inevitable end of either death or finding solace in the events and what the mystery is. So we were talking about whether this overshadows his potential to be realistic, or whether his senses are used as more tools to find what the Woman in White's about and what the Laura's play in that is.
So the article discusses gender roles during this time period.
On page 323, Fosco offers Percival advice about, using his wits to dominate. In the passage, she starts off with human ingenuity has hitherto only discovered 2 ways in which a man can manage a woman. So we believe that, Fosco offering this advice is clever advice on how a man can dominate a woman's sensation and how to manipulate them to empower the role of the male.